Kevin Curry here with a knife video for you. Today is going to be my full review of this knife right here. This is the PMP User. Now, this is a bit of a departure for me and my channel. Generally, I'm looking at stuff that's a little bigger than this and that's locking. This is, this is a slip joint. It's a little on the small side for my preferences, but this was so compelling to me. One, I really, really like this design. I like a lot of the choices they made in terms of materials and features. And so I was just really, really curious to check it out. And so thankfully, Justin over at White Mountain Knives had one. I was able to get it. And along with that, if you use my discount code over there, Sharp Stuff, you will save 10%. I will put a link in the description. Now, PMP knives, these are made by Max Ace, and I know there's some drama surrounding Max Ace, and I'm not even going to get into that. I'm going to review this knife as a knife. Is it well made? Does it cut stuff? That kind of thing. PMP, I know that the owner did do some research and looked around and did some work to try and find a manufacturer that he felt like could hit the levels of quality he wanted for the price point he wanted, and ultimately settled on Max Ace. And the PMP knives that I've had have been all very good. Okay, so that's all I can say about that. I'm not going to get into the politics or what the owner believes or did or whatever. That'll be for a different discussion. Maybe I'll have a rant video about that sometime or something like that. For now, though, we're taking a look at this knife. We've got a slip joint that is about 7.5 inches overall. Let me get you some exact numbers. 7 7/16, 3 1/8 on the blade length, 4 1/4 closed. So fairly small knife. What's the weight on this guy? 2.7 ounces. 2.7 ounces for a knife that's 7.5 inches long is pretty good. The one number that I will say stands out to me the most in this size and weight and carry is the grip area. So from here, from my thumb here to my index finger over here, there's 4 inches. So you can see even with all my fingers here, I've still got some leftover space. This is pretty compelling to me. Normally, I've said this over and over again, but smaller knives, the thing that usually bugs me is they're not very hand feeling, and I feel like I can't really get much done with them. You definitely don't get that feeling with this knife. One, it's a little bit thicker, so it's going to be a full 1/2 inch thick, but you've also got lots of real estate. It just feels like I've got a substantial amount of material here in my hand, so it's a little more confidence inspiring. It feels like something I can get a little more work done with. Okay. We'll have a bigger discussion about that perhaps when we get over to the handle. The next thing to take a look at here is the blade. Now this blade is M390 steel. We've got a full flat grind, really, really nice grinder satin finish on here, extremely thin behind the edge. I mean, extremely thin. And this whole blade stock is extremely thin. So when I complained the other day about thin blade stock, I wasn't thinking of anything this thin. And Nick, if you're watching, this has got the kind of blade stock that you should love. It's insanely thin. Look at this, is a paramilitary 2. Okay, so you can see how much thinner that is. It's like half the thickness or maybe even less than the Para 2. Now, that means this slices like crazy. Pushing this through material like an apple or cardboard or something like that, any kind of material where the blade can get kind of caught up, you don't even notice. Like this blade is so thin, it just slides right through just about anything. Now, with that said, obviously, this is not going to be the knife you're going to take for your go-to-war option. And let me add, okay, since I brought this up a little while ago, I have had some comments from you guys. So look, if you're making what is clearly a gentleman's folder like this, then why not use really thin blade stock? It makes sense. You're making a knife that's specifically designed to be sort of lighter use, to not be facing any kind of high demand usage or wear and tear. And so, of course, going with a blade stock that's going to give you really, really good slicing performance and sacrifice a bit of toughness is the perfect choice, because it doesn't need to be tough at all. Okay, so in this in this particular design, the thin blade stock works really, really well. Where I don't like to see it is in a knife that's more designed for EDC. That is, it's not a gentleman's knife. I'm going to put on a pair of jeans. I may be going on a hike. I may be, driving with my family around town. I may be going to work, whatever the case may be. I want something that's a little more versatile and can handle just a little bit more. Remember, in any given day, I can be, I don't know, I could just be writing notes or working on a lesson and have a fire call where, I've got to have a tool that's a little more substantial. Not that I often use my folding knife on fire calls, but I just like to know that I've got something that's capable. Anyway, let's get back to the knife itself. And in this particular application, I think the thin blade stock is absolutely the right choice to go with. It's M390. My results using this have been very good, holds an edge like crazy, at least in my experience. I've only had to touch it up a little bit. I haven't really done a full proper sharpening because it hasn't needed it. All right, so now let's get on to the action. And admittedly, guys, this is going to be the top part where I don't really know what I'm talking about. It's a slip joint, okay? It has a half stop. It has a full stop when it's opened. The only thing I would say about this, now, one, I haven't had a lot of slip joints, and the ones that I've had have definitely been on the larger side, and the Manly Companion is the one that I spent the most time with, and I know that's really, really stiff pull. Now, this pull feels much, much easier than that, but it's probably more comparable to other slip joints. I just haven't had a lot of those other slip joints to compare it to. I do have this James brand here, and I will say that the James brand feels just a little bit, okay, and I say it just a little bit stiffer than this guy. All right. Now that could be a result of the leverage. Could also be, now let me say this, when we're talking about opening and closing this, there's a lot of blade exposed here, okay? So unlike this, where you really have to use that nail nick, you can just grab this blade and open it, and that's what I often do. All right, so that's worth considering as well, and that's probably playing into my perception of this being a softer pull. All right, it's not super snappy. It's a little bit snappy. You can kind of see that there. Okay, and again, my limited experience means that I can't tell you how snappy it is compared to other slip joints. I just haven't had a lot of them. All I can say is this: it opens when I want it to open, it closes when I want it to close, and it seems to do a fairly good job of that. So I'm going to stop talking before I display my ignorance any further when it comes to actions on slip joints. So let's move on to the handle. I can speak a little more about that. One, because it's super easy. You can just hold the knife and feel what it feels like. But we can say a couple of things. So we've got carbon fiber here with bolsters, Torx bit construction, which is kind of nice to see. It's not really what you call traditional construction. Traditional knives tend to be a little harder to take apart. This one's just going to pop apart pretty simply for you. Of course, you can see the back spring there as well as the liners. So it is worth noticing that these bolsters are put on top of liners, right? It's not that we've got this milled out and then an overlay put on here. There's specifically, right, spring, liner, and then scales. All right. We have kind of the back spring kind of wraps right around and is implemented into the construction. And of course, we have that pocket clip, which I do like an awful lot. It's comfortable. It disappears right into pocket. It feels good in hand, and it is movable. So this is truly an ambidextrous knife, right? It's left, right hand. You would never notice any difference in terms of deployment or use. I, of course, have the clip on I have it set up for right side tip up carry because I'm right-handed. So, all right. Now we've gone through the features there. Let me now say that we've already kind of suggested this, but I love the grip on this knife. It is very, very comfortable, and it just, it gives me lots of real estate. Even if your hands are bigger than mine, you're going to be just fine. And so for that reason, this really stands out to me. This is a knife that just feels so nice when you're using it that I have to give them lots of credit for ergonomics. And that's what accounts for that is the fact that, one, it's fairly large here, but it's also fairly thick. So a thicker handle is almost always going to be more comfortable. It's just going to be a little less comfortable when you have it in your pocket because it's going to be more noticeable. Now, guys, I've got to admit here, when we get to the comparison portion of this discussion, I don't have a lot to compare it to. I really don't. I've already had the James brand slip joint out. I'll grab that again. So I've got this little guy, and one other knife I thought I'd throw in here. This is the Real Steel Sidus, and the reason I brought this in is because it's sort of, overseas made, some nicer materials than, perhaps some other liner locks that you might see. And then the last thing I'll bring in is the Para 2, only because everyone is pretty well familiar with how the Para 2 is in terms of size and how it feels in hand and all that kind of stuff. So because people are largely familiar with this, that should give you an idea of overall size on this knife and perhaps how it'll feel in your hand and in your pocket compared to, your own PM2. Overall, what are my thoughts here? Well, guess what, guys? If you kind of been following along, I like this knife quite a bit. It's interesting. It's a bit of a departure for me. I like that, it's got most of what I look for in a folding knife other than a lock. And, that makes it legal in a lot of different places. It makes it carryable. It makes it less scary. And so as a gentleman's knife, when I'm, going to church or wearing a suit to do a funeral or a wedding or something like that, it works really, really well. It's also extremely lightweight. So when you're carrying, when you're wearing dress pants, they tend to not be very substantial. So having something that's a little lighter and easier to carry is also a real benefit. So yeah, I think PMP Knives has done a good job with this. They've given us something that's attractive, that's very easy to carry, that's a little bit different, that's highly useful, and what more could you really want? All right. So yeah, I think this is a win from PMP. Thanks to all of you for watching. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Are you like me, where generally speaking you favor something more like this, but from time to time you'll depart and try something a little bit different? Or are you like, look, Kevin, this is a slip joint. I have no interest in slip joints. Just forget the whole thing. I'd love to hear that down below. Again, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.